It's a new year and welcome back to Quantum News Monthly, the show where we teach each other and you guys the science behind the biggest quantum information developments. I'm Debo.
And I'm Mingyu. Now last month, obviously, Harvard's paper has caused a lot of excitement among scientists and even among tech bros on Reddit.
So what's the big deal? And where exactly are we towards the grand goal of fault-tolerant quantum computers?
Did Harvard really solve logical quantum computing? And how does their work compare to experiments by Google and Quantinuum from the last year?
That's what we're here to talk about. We read the whole Harvard paper, even the extended figures, the supplements, the referee reports.
Oh wow, did you really?
I definitely read the tweets.
Cool, good enough. Let's jump into it, and make sure to stay to the end because we're going to compare three big quantum error correction players on all of these different criteria. In order to fully appreciate the Harvard study, we have to first understand why we need logical qubits, or quantum error correction, in the first place. The fundamental problem with qubits, the building blocks of quantum computers, is that unlike binary bits in laptops, qubits often have errors. Whether it's trapped ions, neutral atoms, or superconducting qubits, qubits are imperfect and make mistakes.
So the idea of quantum error correction is to entangle several crappy qubits to make a hopefully better qubit. For example, instead of encoding your qubit state in a single atom, you might decide, I'm going to encode one qubit among 10 atoms. And that way your information is better protected from errors. And you call this combination of atoms the logical qubit, whereas each atom is a physical qubit. You might have noticed I said at the beginning that the logical qubit will hopefully be better than the physical qubit. That's because encoding a logical qubit requires several entangling operations and measurements. So this overhead can sometimes actually make matters worse. Plus, there's more physical qubits for errors to happen on. For error correction to be useful, all of your qubits and physical operations need to be better than a certain error threshold. That is why contemporary quantum error correction is hard. But amazingly, we're on the verge of going below the threshold on so many different platforms.
So, if you are below the threshold, it's better to have more physical qubits per logical qubit. There's this concept called code distance, which is how many physical errors it takes to go from logical 0 state to logical 1 state. Generally, more physical qubits per logical qubit gives a bigger code distance. If your code distance is 3, you can correct one physical error. If your code distance is 5, you can correct two physical errors, and so on. Also, if your code distance is 2, you cannot correct an error, but you can detect when an error happens.
And this is where Google's experiment published in 2022 came in clutch, because for the first time they showed that you can achieve a lower logical error rate by expanding the logical qubit to more physical qubits, which is a hallmark of quantum error correction.
Google uses a type of quantum error correcting code called the surface code. The idea is really elegant. You have this square lattice of qubits with nearest neighbor connections. And a d by d patch of physical qubits can encode a single logical qubit of code distance d. Google used their Sycamore chip with 72 superconducting qubits, so they can implement up to distance 5 surface code. They measured the logical qubit error rate for the distance 3 code and the distance 5 code. The distance 3 code uses 17 qubits and the distance 5 code uses 49 qubits. And after a ton of work improving both hardware and algorithm, they showed that their distance 5 logical qubit has lower error than the distance 3 logical qubit. They used more physical qubits to decrease the logical error rate.
One more remarkable thing about Google's experiment, to me, is that the improved logical error rate is sustained for many repeated error correction cycles. This is important because certain types of errors, like leakage errors, can propagate to other physical qubits with repeated correction cycles. So here, Google is showing that they can handle leakage quite well with good calibration, at least up to 25 cycles.
According to Google's roadmap, their next step is to make larger surface code, probably distance 15 or so that they can have a logical qubit that is actually long-lived. It'll be very exciting to see this journey happening.
Now on to the next contender, Quantinuum. They have put out 3 quantum error correction papers recently which are all relevant to our comparison today. So let's dive into it. Quantinuum uses trapped ion qubits. A very nice feature of trapped ion qubits being that the qubits are not restricted to nearest neighbor connectivity. And Quantinuum can shuttle ions around above their chip to entangle any pair of qubits, unlike superconductors. This all-to-all connectivity allows error correcting codes that use relatively fewer physical qubits per logical qubit.
In this paper, Quantinuum demonstrates making 2 distance 3 logical qubits, using 20 physical qubits. What's more, they can perform a logical 2-qubit gate between the pair of logical qubits. That needs many physical 2-qubit gates, more than 100 if you do everything rigorously. So, it's quite amazing that they can get decent logical fidelity after running such a deep circuit.
Previously, in this 2021 paper, Quantinuum had done 6 rounds of error correction on their distance 3 logical qubits. And in this more recent paper, they performed a 1-bit addition algorithm on 3 logical qubits. But it's crucial to note that the logical qubits here are distance 2, meaning they can only detect errors and not correct them, which is still useful because you can throw out the shots where you have qubit errors. And that's exactly what Quantinuum did by post-selecting on the data.
All of these Quantinuum experiments were performed on the H1 system. Just last month, a paper on their H2 system got published, which has a cool racetrack architecture. The fidelities are quite amazing, so it'll be exciting to see their next QEC experiments on this and future generation systems. Finally, let's discuss our new challenger in the game, Harvard. Harvard dropped this big paper in the journal Nature that's still undergoing copy editing at the time of filming. And before going on to quantum error correction, I just want to say, how cool is this video? They're literally moving hundreds of atoms in and out of these different zones, shining light like zoom, and entangling all of these atoms. It's just amazing to have this precise control on this many atoms.
And I think that's really the key differentiator for the neutral atom logical processor compared to other platforms so far. They carry out qubit operations on the whole logical qubit like it's one unit, whether it's transport or unitary rotations, rather than operate on each physical qubit. This is a significant logistical change from other works we've seen thus far. And as an AMO experimentalist, I definitely appreciated that part.
Yeah, and on top of that, they use a staggering 280 physical qubits, which is also very impressive. Harvard uses neutral atom qubits, and neutral atoms have long been a frontrunner in the criteria of the number of physical qubits. And because they can move these 280 atoms around, they have a lot of flexibility in choosing which quantum error correcting code to use, as they can also exploit the arbitrary connectivity that we also see among trapped ions. The paper shows a lot of different things, but the first thing we'll focus on here is the surface code experiment. In this figure, the Harvard team makes 2 surface code logical qubits of code distance up to 7.
Yeah, we're talking about a comparison between distance 3, 5, and 7, where in H code, they use 13, 37, and 73 atoms each.
Specifically, they demonstrated a logical CNOT gate between pairs of logical qubits. Logical entangling gates between distance 7 surface codes? I did not think this was possible so soon.
On that note, what's your thought on the logical CNOT gate? Because there was some interesting discussion between the reviewers and the authors on this, especially reviewer number 2.
Yeah, I think it's very impressive. First, the error of logical CNOT turned out to be about 20% for distance 3 and 40% for distance 7. And for distance 7, this means that they created a state where 146 atoms are entangled all together, and that's already mind-blowing. But it doesn't show the desired trend of error going down with the larger code distance. But then, the authors used a new error correction decoder and showed that the logical error rate actually decreases as the distance goes up to 7.
Right. So this extends Google's work on logical errors versus code distance, but Harvard goes up to distance 7 now.
Yeah, and also, this is for logical CNOT gate and not memory.
That's right, because Google compared errors for a single logical qubit. So they reported the logical memory errors, which are errors for maintaining a logical qubit state. But Harvard is doing operations on the logical qubits, which is taking a large step further.
However, the Harvard team only showed this for a single round of error correction, while Google could do 25 rounds. The Harvard paper acknowledges that repeating many rounds of error correction is an important goal for future research, so we hope to see that in the future.
Another thing that this paper showed is a logical circuit using 48 logical qubits. Yes, you heard it right, 48 logical qubits. They used a distance 2 code, which means that they can only detect errors and not correct them. Still, implementing a circuit using tens of logical qubits has been out of reach for other platforms thus far. So this is awesome.
Each line here represents a logical qubit and not physical qubit. Plus, this is a really deep circuit, which means there's very many operations. The Harvard team ran something called a scrambling circuit, which is similar to what Google ran in their famous quantum supremacy experiment back in 2018. Back then, Google used 53 physical qubits, and here the Harvard team used 48 logical qubits. So that's a lot of progress in 5 years.
This is quite a milestone work that demonstrates quantum error correction in the scale of a few hundred physical qubits. According to the paper's outlook, their techniques can be readily scaled to over 10,000 physical qubits. Of course, their fidelities should improve to do repeated error correction. So it'll be exciting to see all the progress happening in the upcoming years.
So, the big question is, who's gonna win? Which platform would successfully build fault-tolerant quantum computers, destroy crypto, and solve climate change? Going back to our table, to actually make a robust quantum computer, you can't just do well on some of the rows. You have to do well on all of these rows with much better numbers than we have today. So, there's a long journey ahead.
And that's why we want to remind everyone who's asking, when will quantum computers simulate 100 trillion atoms perfectly? That's so inconceivably far away that a better question would be, when can quantum computers actually fault-tolerantly factor a number larger than 15?
And of course, there are many more contenders than just Google, Quantinuum, and Harvard. For example, IBM published this paper in Nature recently about magic states, which is a super important resource in quantum error correction, but we didn't have time to cover it this month.
That's it for this month. Make sure to tune in next month when we may or may not tell you which quantum companies you should invest your life savings in.
So subscribe.